if you believe that men earn more money than women for the same work, you should be angry. It would be evidence that there's a sort of a disrespect for women. And I remember when I was on the board of directors of the National Organization for Women in New York City, I used to organize the men's portion of the demonstrations on Women's Strike for Equality Days. And I remember one day walking around and thinking to myself, I was in my 20s at this time, and I'm saying to myself, gee, when I get a little bit older, I get my doctorate and so on, I'm going to maybe form some companies, and I'll hire all women, because if I hire all women, these women can produce things for 79 cents, or at that time it was 59 cents, and we'll be able to produce any other companies. And so that then I said to myself, well, maybe there's some flaw in this whole thinking. And before I go off and produce all these companies that have only women workers, maybe there's some value to men that I should sort of maybe at least look into and research this before I start going and doing activism in this area. And so I started looking into this, and I started to see that women who own their own businesses at that point in time earned only 29% of what men who owned their own businesses earned. Today, that's up to 49%. But so you say to yourself, wait a minute, women who owned their own businesses, they all have in common one thing. They have no male bosses to discriminate against them. They create their own agenda. So if they have no male bosses to do the discrimination, then something deeper is going on here than discrimination against women by men. And so I started then looking further in my research, and I came across a study by the Rochester Institute of Technology, and they looked at people women who had MBAs and men who had MBAs. And they asked women with MBAs, so these are women who are obviously very focused on their work, more so than the average woman, and they've asked them what did they want from their MBA, what did they want from their businesses, and the women said 76% of the men said that they wanted, their number one desire in having their own business was income. The number 1, 2, 3, and 4 desire for women was autonomy, flexibility, fulfillment, and safety. Money was not even in the first four preferences for women as to why they own their own businesses. And when you have autonomy and flexibility, when you have flexibility, like 25 to 35 hours a week, and you have close to home, you limit many things you can do to when you're just focused on money. And so I started researching this more for why men earn more, and I started to come on one difference in male-female work-life decisions after the other, ended up being able to measure 25 differences in the way women and men make work-life decisions, and found that each of the male decisions led to men earning more money, and each of the female decisions led to women on average having a more balanced life, which usually means a better life by most people's evaluation of what a happier life is. And so I had all these 25 differences lined up, and the title of the book was 25 Ways to Higher Pay at that point, which then later became just a sort of sidebar. But the guts of the book was 25 ways to higher pay, but I started to see that all these high pay methods were not that appealing to women. Right. They could earn, if they were not well educated women, they could earn more money working as a garbage collector than they could working in a supermarket. But the average woman didn't find collecting garbage that appealing. If they were in college, they could earn more money working as an engineer than they could studying French literature or art history, but more women wanted to study literature and then wanted to be an engineer, even though the sales engineers, for example, earn 141% of what sales engineers who are female earn 141% of what sales engineers who are males earn. I started seeing that other areas that lead to men earning more, their greater willingness to work more hours on weekends, their greater willingness to travel across the country, be away from home for 3 or 4 or 5 days in a row, their greater willingness to relocate to areas like maybe Iowa Nebraska that may not be the heartland of sun and warmth, and they may not want to move there, but they felt that if that was where the next promotion was, that they should do that. These were all jobs that were dirty, that were dangerous. We all know that 93% of the people that are killed in the workplace are males, and much higher percentages of males die from things like black lung disease, from being a firefighter or a coal miner years afterwards, that do not go in the statistics of people dying from hazardous works. And so I had 25 things that women could do to earn more money, but not that many women were interested in doing those things, because the road to high pay is a toll road. But not that many women were interested in doing those things, because the road to high pay is a toll road. And pay is a paradox. Pay is the paradox of the power you forfeit to get the power of pay. The power you forfeit is the power to have more time with your family, have more time doing fulfilling work. The more fulfilling that work, people often say, well, the teachers aren't paid a great deal because they're women mostly. And that is really a misconception. In all fields that are fulfilling, there's a very large number of people competing to be in those fields, whether that's writing, that's acting, that's teaching, and all those being an artist. The fulfilling fields have huge numbers of people who want to be in those fields versus the number of people who are needed in those fields that we're willing to pay for. So you have a huge supply-demand gap. The more fulfilling the work, the less it pays. The less fulfilling the work, like the collecting of the garbage or working in a coal mine, the more it has to pay in order to get people to do it. And so we frame so much in the area of discrimination. And if there was discrimination, I have 2 daughters, no sons, I'd be very concerned about that. But I try to teach my daughters to look at the world in such a way as to say, what is there that's available for me, and without focusing on discrimination as being something that undermines my energy, and look instead at what I can be energized to do, that I really enjoy doing, that can give me the best combination of trade-offs for earning more and having a more balanced life at the same time. And that's what I want for both our sons and daughters. And when one works from...
What are your thoughts about the high percentage of highly educated women, doctors and such, dropping out after 10 or so years?
Yeah, first of all, it's a very good question, and secondly, it's accurate, and third, it's a little bit more accurate in the United States than 10 years. Female doctors and female attorneys drop out fairly quickly, unless they don't have children. If they do have children, they drop out. The female attorneys don't go back to work in very high rates. They're also more likely to be attorneys in softer fields like public interest fields and so on. And so I think what happens with highly educated women is that highly educated women very frequently marry highly educated men, and then they have choices. And so once they have children, they think of themselves, when they get their law degree or their MBA or their medical degree, they think of themselves as likely to work. But as they start raising their children and seeing how oftentimes gratifying that is, and there's enough income coming in from their husbands, the philosophy of working as liberation starts morphing into the understanding that I want a life where I can not just have time with my children, but I can have time with exercise, I can have time with my spiritual practice, I can have time with women friends, I can have time with my husband, I can have time to travel, I can have alone time. And so when all those things come together, the importance of the law degree or the medical degree and going to the top of one's field starts taking a different level of priority. And so that's why you have a fairly high percentage of women in those fields once they have children, either cutting back significantly on their work or dropping out of the workplace to begin with, and then going back part-time after the children get older. And so it's part of the larger, deeper belief system that work is about liberation and freedom, when in fact work is usually a means to an end. It's a means to a happier life. And if one's husband is producing, more income, then oftentimes you take care of other things in life than that. I think what can change that is is the fact that people knowing that children do extremely well when raised by the primary parent being a dad. And so if a woman really does have a strong interest in being a doctor or a lawyer, marrying a man who's interested in focusing on children will lead to the woman being very likely to be extremely successful in her field and the children being raised extremely well. But we aren't training our sons and our daughters, we aren't training our daughters to keep an eye open for the man who listens well because he has the potential for being a good father to the children and even a full-time father. That's some of the training that we need to do for the future that hasn't been touched upon when we've been